In this episode, we talk with multimedia artist Rick CLAUSSEN. He'll tell us about the unusual things he's used in his art. Think trees, a power drill, fire extinguisher. He's got a story about a toothbrush and a tank. And he tells us how joining the Army introduced him to the love of his life. Hey there, I'm Maria.
And I'm Stephanie, and we're your hosts for Creative Conversations with Generation Jones.
A podcast where we interview real people of a certain age who have been living a life of creativity.
Some do it for a living, and some do it because it fills their soul. But they all have great stories and pearls of wisdom to share.
With us, so grab a cocktail or two and enjoy.
Yep. Today, we are talking with Rick CLAUSSEN, a multi-talented and multifaceted artist. Artist.
And artiste.
Yes. Welcome, Rick.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So, we'll start off with our first question, which is always, what's your favorite cocktail?
Well, when I drink cocktails, I drink a tequila sunrise usually. Normally, I'm a beer drinker, and I do like absinthe quite a lot.
Ooh.
But if I'm going to drink a cocktail, it's a tequila sunrise. I think it was the first cocktail I had.
Yeah, so
That's
what's
quite
special
yummy.
about the tequila sunrise?
It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's got that orange and the red in it. And those are some of the colors I can actually see.
Oh, right.
That's
We'll
right.
get into that in a minute, won't we?
Yes.
Okay, but so you made a tequila sunrise for
Yes.
us.
Right.
So let's have a little tasty taste, shall we?
Yes.
All right. Clink
Cheers.
and clink.
Quite delicious.
What were the ingredients again?
It's tequila, orange juice, and grenadine, and ice. Very simple.
It is.
It
And it's
was
very
the
pretty.
rock and rollers' choice of the 70s.
So I've heard.
Tell
Yeah.
us more.
Yeah. So evidently the story is that it was either Mick Jagger or Keith Richards, the story goes, that they had this drink in some little bar in California and they just thought it was fantastic. And so that's all they drank for the 1972 tour. And it was called the Tequila Sunrise and Cocaine Tour.
Oh, 1972.
72.
Sounds
And then,
about
of course,
right. It does.
well, and then, of course, in 73, the Eagles came out with the song Tequila Sunrise.
Right.
So the rockers loved it, I
Right.
guess, right? So
I really want to sing that, but I can't because
Rock
it's a
and
podcast.
roll.
Right.
It's a podcast and we get flagged. So, but we all know the Tequila Sunrise Eagles song.
Oh, yeah, it was
Right,
popping
right.
up in my head right then, and I
Yeah.
thought, I better not.
No.
Now, who knows whether these stories are true or not, but that's what's written. That's what I read, and I thought, that's cool. Okay.
I'd heard something about in Acapulco, Mexico, but who knows?
Who knows?
Nobody
Who
really
knows?
knows. Not
Oh,
that it's
well.
important. It
You're
tastes
right.
good.
It does taste good.
Yes.
And we recommend that you make them. Okay, make one. Okay, so, Rick, what did you want to be when you were young?
Well, I wanted to be a truck driver when I was really young because they used to drive through my hometown all the time, and I thought it was really interesting, getting to honk the horn and everything. But later I decided I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to invent things, and so I needed to learn about electronics, and so I joined the military, actually, in order to learn electronics.
Wow.
And you grew up in Missouri, correct?
Right, a
Yeah.
small town south of St. Louis, St. Genevieve, Missouri. Oldest permanent white settlement on the west bank of the Mississippi.
Oh, my goodness.
Founded in 1735.
Whoa.
Wow. Okay.
It's
you're-
a tourist trap that no one's ever heard of
Until now.
until now.
Wow.
And your father was the sheriff, correct?
He was a sheriff for a while. He was a police officer for a longer while. So he was pretty famous in a small town of only 5,000 people.
Wow. How was that growing up with a dad who was that important?
Well, I don't know about important, but it was interesting. Everyone knew me. That was for certain.
Yeah.
And what did they call you?
Little zombie.
Okay, why?
Well, my father was a pitcher on a baseball team in a small town, and he would stare at the batter for a long time, right before he would throw the ball. And at the very last second before a balk was called, he would throw the ball, fastball or whatever. And finally someone yelled at him, "Hey, you zombie, throw the ball." And the name stuck. And so all of his kids, me and my two sisters, were referred to as Little Zombie. Either collectively or one at a time.
Wow. Well, but that name did not stick because I've never heard you be called.
No, that did not stick at all. In fact, my nickname around the house was Boy.
Oh, were you the only boy?
I was the only boy.
Oh.
Middle child.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I'm a junior.
Okay.
My full name is Harold Richard Claussen Jr. because my mother couldn't spell Bartholomew.
Oh.
What?
My father wanted me to be named Bartholomew Christopher Colt Claussen. And my mother could not spell Bartholomew, and she said, "Can we just call him Junior?"
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Holy moly.
And then you spend your life as Bart.
I could have been
That
Bart.
could have been fun.
But no, and I was boy at home and little zombie on the streets.
Did you make art as a kid?
A little bit. I did some poetry. I did some black and white sketches. My father painted the outfield fences with advertisements when I was young, and I had to help him painting backgrounds and things.
Oh.
And so he did a lot of lettering and calligraphy, and so I learned lettering and calligraphy from him, and I started working in pen and ink.
Interesting.
But you had a little issue, did you not?
Yes,
What was it?
I didn't find out until I joined the military that I'm colorblind.
Da, da, da.
But not severely colorblind. I'm not red-green. I'm not blue-yellow. I'm color weak, I think they call it. I don't see pastels at all.
So you see bright colors.
I see the primaries and the secondaries, blue, yellow, red, orange, green, and purple. But after that, it's all mud.
Wow.
Doesn't look. I see colors, and I see something's blue-greenish or purple-ish, but I can't really tell you what it is.
Isn't that
Wow.
interesting?
That
So
is.
for someone to become an artist and be colorblind.
Yeah, it really wasn't the intention. In fact, when I found out that I was colorblind, I took a test in the Army where they have the circles with all the dots, and there's a number in there, and I got 1 out of 15 right.
Wow.
Wow.
The very first one where it was bright red and bright green. I got that one.
So they test you for color in
For
the
color.
Army?
Right. They show you the circle with the dots in it. Because I was going to be an electrician to learn electronics.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay. I
And
was
so
thinking, why would they do that?
They still
Yeah.
test you.
Okay.
And
No
so
matter what your job
why
is.
is it important to know to see colors?
Because the wires are all different colors, the
Right.
transistors are all different colors, and you don't get to put the yellow wire where the white wire goes.
Could go boom.
But yeah, it was kind of funny. I got the first one right, and then the next one wrong, and then the next one wrong. I didn't see any number in there. And after about the 5th one, I started thinking this is some sort of psychological test. They're going to see if I'm going to lie.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny.
Oh my God, that's so crazy.
So yeah, and often I would paint something the wrong color and then not realize it until I got yelled at for painting it the wrong color.
Interesting.
So you joined the Army right out of high school, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just before I graduated. I had completed all my courses, and I wanted to get out of my hometown, quite frankly, and see the world. And they offered a cash bonus for anybody who would join early before graduating. So I
Took it.
I took it
Yeah.
and then went off to basic training.
And you ended up in Germany.
Eventually, yes. I ended up in Germany in a small town near Nuremberg, close to the Czechoslovakian border. back when
What
that was a
happened
thing.
there?
Well, I drove tanks up and down the border.
Wow.
And what else?
Oh, well, I met my wife.
Okay, there you go. Okay. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I met my wife.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I stumbled across this little tea room that when I first saw it, I thought it was an opium den.
Ooh.
There were murals on the walls, and they were playing Pink Floyd, and there was no furniture. It was all cushions and tables down really low, only like 6 or 8 inches off the floor, incense. I was like, oh, no, I should not be here.
18 years old. Right?
In the Army.
In the Army.
And then I realized they had chessboards on those low tables. Like, oh, chess, I can stay here. This is good. And it turns out it was a Protestant youth group tea house
Oh.
where they only served fruit juice and tea because it was an alternative to bars in Germany. Because you could buy beer cheaper than you could buy water in a bar.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they created this alternative space, and they had 3 rules. No smoking, no alcohol, and no shoes.
No shoes.
No shoes, because
Okay.
everything was pillows.
Oh, right. Right.
And so you would go in and sit down, and they would ask you if you want something, and you'd order a tea or a fruit juice, and it would cost you like 9 cents.
Oh my
wow.
God.
For
Wow.
students.
Right,
Yeah.
for students or just youths in general. And I took a couple of my GI friends there a few times, and it just wasn't their thing. But I liked it, and that's where I met my wife.
And how old was she?
She was 16 at the time,
And you were
18.
okay.
But
So-
you didn't get married until...
Oh, 8 years later.
8 years later.
Yes.
So what did she think of you, the American GI?
Well, apparently she thought my name was Errol at first, like Errol Flynn.
Okay.
Because Harold is not a common German name. Harald is. It's a different pronunciation.
Okay.
But we were kind of making eyes at each other across the room, and she and her friend were playing three-dimensional tic-tac-toe, which was 4x4x4. You drop beads onto pegs. Mm-hmm. And they asked if I would like to play. And I said, sure. And basically her friend pushed Angie in front of me, and we started playing this game. And it was a tie, which is extremely difficult in 4x4x4. Extremely difficult.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And I thought, oh, well, she's smart. I should probably marry her.
You thought at 18.
Right.
In the first meeting.
And actually, about 8 weeks later, I asked her if she would marry me, and she said, oh, hell no, are you crazy? German girls don't get married until they're 24.
Ooh.
That's 8 years. I'm not waiting 8 years.
And you did.
And I did.
Yeah.
But I was also right because she married me.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So did anything else interesting happen whilst you were in the Army?
Oh, a few interesting things. I mean, I got in trouble once and had to clean a tank with a toothbrush.
Oh, my God. How long did that take?
Well, I spent a week at it.
A week.
A week. And I was, at that point in time, I was wanting to get out of the Army. I'd had my fill, of the whole structure and rank and file. Then they brought back a tank, and they were punishing me for something that I did. Hard to say what it was. And so I had to clean this entire tank with a toothbrush and a bucket of water.
Oh.
So I sat down with my bucket of water and my toothbrush, and I started scrubbing one of the road wheels. And there are 36 road wheels.
Oh.
And at the end of the day, I had one clean.
Oh,
My God. It was very clean.
Yeah.
But I was taking my time and going very slowly and making sure.
Wow.
And they had a sergeant standing there shouting at me the entire time.
Oh.
That's his job, is to hustle me along and get me done. And he threatened me with, you're going to be here until this whole tank is clean, right? And I said, yes, and so are you.
Yo.
Because I am now a security risk. I am now a security risk.
Because?
I'm being punished.
Why does that make you a security risk?
Because I know how all of these tanks work.
Oh.
I could just take
my
one.
God.
Oh.
They don't have keys.
Did you drive them?
Oh.
I drove them. I was a gunner. I was a loader. I even was a commander for a short time.
Wow.
So I know how they work.
Okay.
So
And
they were like, okay, goodbye, go
Yeah.
home.
Finish up. You're
Well,
done.
it took a whole week.
to clean the tank.
A whole week. Well, no, I didn't finish it.
Oh, you didn't?
I got to the 5th road wheel, right, out of 32 or 36. And the sergeant's been standing there the whole time, all day long, even after hours, screaming at me because he has to be there.
Yeah.
And he finally recommended that they send me to a psychologist and see what's wrong with me. And the psychologist said I had apathy, which was completely wrong. I hated the military at that point. Right? I was not apathetic
That is
at
a strong
all.
emotion. Much stronger than apathy.
Yeah. And that I was no longer worth feeding, and they kicked me out.
Oh, really?
But with an honorable discharge.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
General under honorable conditions.
And
So
where did you go from there?
Wait, no, before that, though, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Was it your toothbrush that you had to use?
No.
Okay. You always hear about weird shit that the military does. Clean the toilets with the toothbrush. It's like, it's not your toothbrush.
That's a real thing. The toilet with the toothbrush.
it?
That's a real thing.
Okay.
Yeah. They actually make you drink out of the toilet at one point.
No.
Stop.
You know that
We're
the
going to get in
sucker's
trouble
clean.
from the Army.
I know.
They're gonna come back,
No, we
need to remove
appreciate
that
the
from
Army, and we
This
thank.
was a long time ago.
I know, and we thank people we thank you for your service if you are
Yes.
in the armed forces. And here, let's do a little clinky clink because we appreciate you,
To the military.
the military,
military.
indeed, and the folks who serve.
Okay. Okay, so where did you go from there? You came where?
I went back to Missouri, and I stayed there for a couple of years working in various jobs. I worked in a window factory for a while. That was fun. Continued to do artwork. Actually did artwork in the military.
What did you do?
I painted the grenade launcher covers on our tanks.
Did you do like cool and pretty, or just like the green?
Flaming Skull.
Oh, you.
All right.
At any rate, so I went back to Missouri. I worked there for a while. Then my aunt told me they had a job opening in Arkansas at a construction site. They needed a backhoe driver. And so I went there and applied. I basically just walked in and said, yeah, I'm your new backhoe driver. And they said, okay, sign here, and the job site's 4 miles that way, go. And I got there, and I said, I'm your new backhoe driver. And they said, there it is. And I climbed up on it, and I started to mess with controls. And the guy said, you don't know anything about driving a backhoe, do you? No, not really. Here's a shovel.
Oh, no.
Little demotion. But.
Oh, wow.
So how did you end up in Miami, though?
Well, I was in contact with my wife, at that time girlfriend.
Right.
Long distance, through the mail, phone calls, all that kind of stuff. And she called me up and said she got a Fulbright scholarship to study anywhere in the world.
Wow.
She's a scientist.
Yes. Child psychologist.
Okay.
And she listed off all of these really cold places. It was in the middle of winter in Missouri. And then she said Miami. I said, Miami. Miami sounds really good. It's warm there, right? And she applied to the University of Miami and was accepted into their graduate program. And I bought a motorcycle.
Ooh.
And cash.
Ooh.
And then she flew to Missouri. We sent our bags on a Greyhound down to Miami, and we rode through the South on a motorcycle for a week.
Wow.
That's fun.
Camping out at every little campground we found along the way.
Yeah.
Even went swimming in a hurricane because we had no radio and had no idea there was a hurricane.
Oh, dear.
So we stopped in Jacksonville to camp, and there was a hurricane happening in the Gulf at the time, and I went out swimming in the surf because the surf was huge.
Could you not see the clouds?
It was night.
It was night. Okay.
So
Pass on the clouds.
high waves, and decided to try body surfing. And got out far enough and started swimming in as fast as I could. Got a wave, and I'm body surfing just like they show you in the movies. And got up next to the beach and had my nipples sanded off.
Oh! How's that?
God.
But that was the highlight of the trip.
There you go. The nipple sanding off.
Highlight,
Right.
Yeah.
the low light.
But then we drove the rest of the way to Miami, and I dropped her off at her dorm, and I went and lived in a campground for a week.
Ooh.
And you actually went to University of Miami too, though, didn't you?
Several years later,
Yeah.
once she got her degree, and she actually started working for them, then I went and took college courses at night, climbed trees during the day.
And you were an art major, right?
Art and education.
Okay.
And then once I'd gotten enough credits at the Miami-Dade Community College, I switched over to the University of Miami. And thank God she worked there because I got tuition remission.
Oh,
Ooh,
that's
but you
nice.
guys weren't married yet, were you?
We were married just before I started
Okay.
at UM.
Okay. Backtracking, you climbed trees during the day.
Yes.
Explain that, please.
My boss was an arborist in Miami, and he loved trees, and he hated it when people would cut them down, so he would find ways of talking them out of it, like just trimming it a little bit, making it prettier, let the wind blow through so the hurricanes don't take it down. And I worked for him as a climber,
Okay.
and it was a lot of fun.
Were these all kinds of trees? Were they primarily palm trees?
All kinds of trees,
kinds of
live
trees.
oaks, palm trees, rubber trees, you name it.
So no fear of heights.
At the time, no.
Okay.
In fact, I used to do cliff diving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
all
was
kinds of
that?
weird shit people did in their 20s,
I
right?
know.
Oh, no, as a kid.
As a
16.
kid. Oh, my God.
Okay.
At 16, I jumped off of a 20-meter cliff, like 62 feet.
Oy.
Oh, Lord.
Twice the height of the telephone pole.
Your poor mother.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
She had no idea.
She called him
Thank
boy,
God.
you know?
Thank
Yeah,
God.
exactly. Don't tell the mothers these things.
No.
Oh, no. Never.
So tell us this little story, since you've been talking about trees, climbing trees, about a sculpture class you took at University of Miami
Right?
that had to do with a ficus tree.
Right?
Oh,
Well,
ficus tree, yeah.
Yeah.
so everybody knows the ficus tree, the indoor plant
Right,
everyone has here.
right.
I'd gotten one from someone that I really didn't want because in Miami they're almost a pest. And it was in a pot, and I wanted the dirt that was in the pot to put into my garden. So I took the tree out of the pot and cut all the branches off of it and just laid it there on the patio and forgot about it. And a couple of weeks later, after washing more of the dirt off of the roots, I noticed it had started sprouting leaves. Even though it was no longer in a pot and most of the dirt was gone, its branches were cut off, it's laying on its side, it started sprouting. So in the sculpture class we had to do something found art. And so I figured this is kind of found. So I tied it up with a rope and I hung it upside down from another tree in my backyard. And every day I would go out and spray the roots with more water to get more of the dirt off.
Uh-huh.
And the tree continued to grow and leave but all the leaves were inverted. They were facing up towards the roots
Ah,
Interesting.
okay, yeah,
To
right.
get the sun.
Right.
to get the sun.
Yeah.
And then when it came time to present it at the art show, I took it there and I hung it upside down just like it was. And one of the things that my professor did was when you were doing a showing, you weren't allowed to speak as the artist. The piece had to speak for itself.
Okay.
And so it was hanging there, and all these people were walking up, making all these different comments about it, and some of what I refer to as art babble. It's a living bridge between conceptual and real art. And
Blah, blah, blah.
exactly.
Blah, blah.
And my friend walks over to me and he says, "You just hung a tree upside down in your backyard, didn't you?" Shh.
And you got an A, probably.
I got an A.
Yeah.
But it was a fun class. It really was.
Funny. So let's take a little pause. Let's have a little drink here and let our listeners, take a little pause. And one more little click. Cheers. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
So, Rick, how long were you in Miami for before you moved to Atlanta?
We were there for 18 years.
And what brought you to Atlanta?
Well, my wife got a job offer to come to Atlanta to work for the CDC. That was kind of funny that she first got the offer a year before we left, and I thought she was kidding. And I didn't have the best time in Georgia when I was in the military. So when she said she wanted to move to Georgia, I'm like, oh, hell no. There's no way I'm moving back to Georgia. Been there, done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
But you weren't in Atlanta. You were in...
No, I was in Hinesville.
Yeah. Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Big
Yeah.
difference, yeah.
But then about a year later, she came to me and she said, "I got this really great job offer. And I know you hate Georgia, but it's in Atlanta." And, okay, who's it for? She said, "The CDC." Well, we're moving.
Yep, absolutely. No brainer.
We're moving. And a friend of hers had offered her the job. And so she was on a year's probation, and then she landed the actual job. And her friend has since moved on.
Yeah, and she's still there.
And she's still there.
Yeah.
She's been there for 17, almost 18 years now.
Yeah.
And she likes it.
Was she pregnant when you came to Atlanta, or
We
was
had
that
a
after?
child.
You already had
Our daughter,
oh,
Emily, was
Okay.
born in Miami.
Okay.
So we moved here with a 20-month-old.
Okay.
No, can't be fun.
And we spent a weekend looking for houses, saw 20 houses in 2 days,
Oh my
Ooh,
goodness.
with the child with you?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
and found the house that we live in. It was like probably the second to last one that we looked at. So we moved here, and then Angie got pregnant about a year later, and then my son was born. So we have 2 kids, Emily and Christopher, both out of high school now.
Yeah. And
Seven.
you were a stay-at-home dad with them, right?
Right, Angie and
Did
I.
your artwork and
Right.
yeah.
I got my degree at the University of Miami in art and education. I was trying to get a double major.
Wow.
And then she got a job offer. I said, well, I can stay home and take care of the kids. Because if we were to pay for childcare, it would cost just as much as I would make.
Yeah.
So
Right.
one of us would be working strictly to pay someone else to watch the children. Well, I'll just watch the children. We'll not spend that.
And make your artwork.
And make my artwork. So I
Right.
got to hang out with my babies all day, and then at night when they went to bed, I'd paint or draw. I did a lot of pen and ink, line drawing, stuff like that. Still did a fair bit of sculpture. Just find objects and start cutting on them and seeing what I could do.
And you have a workshop or art studio in your house.
It's the whole house, basically.
Okay. Why not?
The welding equipment and the plasma cutter are all out in the garage. And
Tell
the
us
heavy-
about the plasma cutter.
Yeah.
Oh, it's basically a little miniature lightsaber. Just cuts right through metal.
No, but how did you get it?
Oh, that was funny. I won $7,000 in the Florida lottery.
Ooh.
And Uncle Sugar took $3,000 right off the top, of
Uncle
course.
Sugar.
Yeah.
And then I gave my wife the other $3,000 and said, "Here, put this in the bank."
Good.
And she said, "What are you going to do with that $1,000?" She's like, "I'm buying a plasma cutter."
There you
she
go.
said, "Why?" "Because I want one." So what are you going to do with it? "I don't know yet."
I'm going to cut shit.
And I started cutting shit. It actually came in really, really handy.
And what did you use it for?
Sculpture, mostly. Like, I make bells out of old scuba tanks and fire extinguishers that have multi-tones. Depending on where you hit them and when you hit them, you can get up to 32 separate notes out of a single bell.
Wow.
That's cool. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm learning how to tune them. to a specific scale. I'm not a musician, so this is all from scratch.
A learning curve, maybe.
Yeah, very steep learning curve. But I've had a lot of fun with them. I've sold quite a few. I've made 50 or so. I think I only have like 20 left.
So when you say you make bells out of those, what do you do?
Well, I take the plasma cutter, and to make something that I can get a scale out of, I just cut straight lines up and down the length of the tank, and then I cut the bottom off at an angle so that each one of those tangs is shorter than the next one.
Oh.
So you end up sort of a spiral arrangement, kind of like a music box comb.
Okay, yeah.
Right,
Interesting.
right.
I was going to say a xylophone.
Or a xylophone.
Yeah.
The only thing is that they're attached at one end, whereas the xylophone is free floating.
Okay.
And in a music box comb, the lowest note is far away from the highest note. But in the case of the bells, they're actually right next to each other because it's a cylinder.
Oh, right, a
So
circle.
this kind of brings in the inventor stuff, too.
Exactly. I saw a guy who was making Japanese gongs out of fire extinguishers where you just cut the bottom off and don't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, those are really cool. They sound great, but they're not really pretty to look at. And I'm more of a visual artist.
Okay.
And so what would happen if you cut patterns and holes into them? Oh, you would ruin the sound. All right, I'll be doing that then.
Make it challenging and interesting and creative.
Oh, yeah, I love the word impossible. It's one of my absolute favorite words. I had a professor tell me that I couldn't do this one particular sculpture that I'd given him a sketch for, and he said it was impossible. I said, oh, I love that word.
And so you did it.
Of course.
Uh-huh.
It took a little longer, a little more work, but it turned out well.
So you also did jewelry as well, didn't you?
Yeah,
for
I
a
did.
while?
I did jewelry at first. That was the first time I was able to take like an idea that I had in my head, put it on paper, and then create a physical object from it.
But you were cutting out little pieces of metal, weren't you?
Yes,
I mean, it wasn't
sawing
like
and
regular, like beading jewelry. It was like,
Oh, yeah, sawing and piercing. You'd buy a
Yeah.
sheet of silver, and you'd drill a hole in it with a little finger drill, and then you'd stick a jewelry saw blade through there, and then you'd start cutting in that little piece of silver. So what you'd do is you would take your design, whatever it was, and you'd glue it to the metal. And then you cut right through the paper and the metal at the same time. It's like a
yeah.
little tiny handsaw or hacksaw.
like a tiny little sculpture.
Right.
Wow.
And after I'd made a few of them, I thought, wow, this is really cool. There's obviously no return on the investment.
Right.
You could sell them. Did you sell them?
A few.
Okay.
But still, the amount of time you put into it, you know that. The amount of
Yeah,
time
I
you
mean,
put
selling
into it.
jewelry, unless you sell in bulk and you sell a lot of it, you don't really make
Okay.
it.
And even then, your margin's low.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's more a labor of love and
Yes,
expressing
unless
your
it's
creativity.
expensive jewelry
Right.
with, with
Diamonds and
diamonds
gold
and
and-
rubies
Yeah.
and yeah.
I did mostly sterling silver, a little bit of gold.
What did you make?
I made earrings, I made bracelets, ear cuffs, the ones that hang over your whole ear, pendants, things like that. I did the planet Saturn, the planet Jupiter. Jupiter actually has a ruby for the Great Red Spot,
Ooh.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
and it has 2 bands of gold across it.
So the big, large pieces that you did, the cutouts, was that after the jewelry?
Right. Somebody introduced me to sculpture. 3D design was the class, and I thought, oh, I like this a lot. And that's where the professor told me something was impossible, so I did it. And then it was like, well, I want to go bigger now. And so I started doing bigger and better sculptures, better in my opinion. Then I transferred to the University of Miami, and I had access to a real sculpture lab,
Right.
which, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like welders and plasma cutters and saws. It was great.
Now, what are you doing right now, art-wise?
Right now, I am doing a lot of what they call acrylic pouring, painting, but I'm trying to incorporate 3D printing into the acrylic pouring. For instance, I have a couple of pieces where I printed out a face, just from the front, not the entire face, but most of it, and then I glued that with acrylic paint onto a canvas, and then I poured paint over that, and then I poured more paint on top of that and tilted it around to get it to move where I wanted on the canvas, and then spun it around at high speed. I set up a baby pool in my basement with a Lazy Susan in it and an electric drill with a big rubber wheel so that I can spin paintings at very high speed.
Another invention.
Yeah. Wow.
He's always inventing.
He is.
Yeah.
He's a creative
That's
inventor.
awesome.
Yeah.
The 3D printing has allowed me to take an idea that I had and turn it into a real object. I had a concept in my brain for an automatic baler for a boat that would automatically pull the water out of the bottom of a boat as you were sailing along. and it wouldn't require a motor, using just a siphon shape. You throw it into the water behind the boat, drag it, and the water flowing through it would create a siphon in the tube,
Wow.
and it would pull the water out of the boat.
Have you used it?
Did you
I
make
have
it?
3D printed 3 different versions. None of them's worked yet.
Oh, you're
Yes.
working on it.
But the
That's your
concept-
new invention.
Yes.
The concept is there, and
Awesome.
it seems to work.
Have you patented any of your inventions?
No, not yet. It has
Will
to
you?
work first.
Well, yeah, there is that. Okay.
That little thing. I mean, not necessarily. There's lots of shit that's patented
Well,
that
true.
does not work.
True.
Yeah, so painting-wise, I set up this baby pool in the basement and the turntable just to keep the mess localized.
Good idea.
I'd watched several different YouTubers and how they do their acrylic pouring. I got into it about 2 years ago, I guess. And I started watching that their rooms were a disaster.
Yeah.
Except this one woman. She had her stuff set up, Kathleen Miller. And she had a baby pool, one of those collapsible ones. And she would put dog pads inside it
Oh, to keep it clean.
to keep it
Yeah.
clean. And it was on her dining room table.
Oh, my goodness.
Carpet
Wow.
around her, china cabinet right behind her. Her whole workshop was literally in her dining room.
Wow.
And it was immaculate.
Wow.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I see it
can't
can be
imagine.
done. I see it can be done.
But you upscaled it, right?
No, actually, I kept it about the same
Oh, you
size.
did? Okay.
I have a 3 foot, a 4 foot, and a 5 foot baby pool, depending on what size canvas I'm using.
But you like to throw paint.
I
don't
throw
you?
paint.
Yeah, you like to throw it.
What does that mean, throw paint? Exactly. Not like throw pots, but what is like literally like hurl the paint
Hurling
and
the
drop it
paint,
at the
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you have
Throw
the
the
canvas
paint.
lying horizontally on this turntable, and you can fling paint at it, or you can pour paint directly on it. Often I'll mix it up in a cup, different layers, and then flip the cup over onto it, and then stab it with a pen, and all the paint will flow out.
Hey,
then
whatever works. You know?
Yeah.
And then you pull the cup off, and then you tilt it around to get the pattern you want to keep in the middle. And that's when I whip out the drill with the rubber wheel on it and spin it at high speed. And all the excess paint goes off to the sides and hits the sides of the baby pool. And the part that I wanted to keep that's in the middle just spreads out over the whole canvas.
So that's the only way to control it is to put the colors that you want in there or to control
There's 100 ways.
a lot of ways. Okay.
Right. One of them I like to do is I'll have my acrylics laid out there, just lines of different colors, and then I'll take a playing card, dip that in acrylic paint that's had a few drops of silicone oil added to it, and then drag that across the wet paint that's already there.
And what does that do to it?
It causes the silicone to react with the acrylic, and the colors that are underneath come bubbling up through.
Wow.
And the colors that are on top separate into what they call cells. And then I'll take another playing card, dip it in a black color instead of white, and swipe in the opposite direction.
Interesting.
And so go back and forth in different directions with different colors, and you can have any kind of what they call an activator color you want. And it just depends on how many drops of silicone you put in, whether you do anything else to it, burn it with fire, drag a stick through
Burn
it.
it with fire.
Yeah.
You burn it with fire?
to pop the bubbles in the acrylic paint.
Ooh.
Man.
And that actually causes little white dots to appear
This sounds
sometimes.
so right up your alley.
It's
you
fun.
know, because it's like fire and knives and paint and
Splashing,
Throwing
dropping,
things around.
Throwing.
spinning, and the creativity.
There's one guy, Colin Schaub, he does a lot of pendulum paintings
yeah,
with that
yeah,
same
yeah,
technique. He's
yeah.
fabulous.
I've seen those, yeah.
What do you think your next medium will be?
Whew. I'm probably going to continue with the 3D printing mixed with the painting. I have a few ideas, like bridging 2 canvases with a single 3D print between them,
Ooh.
Wow.
coming out into space, as it were. and
How
then
many
painting
3D
it.
printers do you have?
3.
3. Are they all different kind of levels of printing or?
They're all pretty much the same. I upgraded all 3 of them so that they could print flexible as well as hard plastics. And they're not expensive anymore. They're about $100.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, you can get a nice 3D printer for $100.
That's crazy. And then,
Wow.
but then the material that you use to print-
$25 a kilo, and that's at expensive places.
Wow. Okay.
I can actually get it for $12 a kilo from Florida. I just have to buy 10 kilos at a time. But that's a lot of plastic.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
the amount of things you can make with a kilo is phenomenal.
Tell us what you did during 2020, during COVID, with your 3D printer.
Oh, yes. Well,
oh yeah,
I,
that's right.
I started 3D printing masks because my wife was making cloth masks to give away. And I thought, I have these 3D printers. I should be able to do something. So I found a design from the National Institutes of Health. and I modified it to fit a Kroger facial cleansing pad, right, as a filter.
As a filter, yeah.
And it made the opening larger and easier to breathe through. And then I just printed the design. It's a mask that goes against your face, the filter, and then the cover, which clips onto it. And it's held in place by a single band around your head. Super simple, super easy. Then I thought, it's kind of boring. So I started printing things to put on the front of it, like lips or fangs.
Yeah,
or
I got one from you that had vampire fangs on it. It was little blood drips.
And you gave me one that was a cat with whiskers.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I made dozens and dozens of those things, and I ended up using flexible filaments so that the mask fit better to your face and was much, much more comfortable. And I was taking custom orders and selling them cheap because I just wanted to play with the 3D printers. So at $20 a pop, they were selling as fast as I could make them.
I bet.
And
Yeah.
I did no advertising at all, just word of mouth. People would see me wearing this funny-looking mask, and where can I get that? Me.
Yeah.
And so I would take orders and never had anybody back out, actually. I had one that was a dragon that changed color in sunlight.
Ooh.
The filament was UV reactive. So when you were in the shade, it was bone white. But as soon as you walked out into the sunlight, it turned dark purple.
Ooh.
Cool.
And I wore
Very
that
cool.
to the Renaissance Festival. It was great fun. Every time I'd walk into a shop, my mask would change color.
Ooh.
Yeah, those 3D printers are cool.
They are cool.
They can print anything now with
yeah,
3D
you
printers.
did some for me one time for a costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to make
Yeah,
little
pieces.
doohickeys.
Yeah, that had all these like little pieces that needed to be added, and it was like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this?
Yeah.
He was like, let me 3D print it. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
That'll save me about 7 hours of work.
Yeah.
The woman across the street wanted to be a Jawa for Halloween, and she asked if I could print a 3D Jawa blaster, the one they used.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me see. Went online, found it for free as a download, downloaded it. 2 days later, she had her blaster.
See, you really are the person that everybody goes to in the
does, I'm
neighborhood for
telling
stuff,
you.
right?
Yes.
Because not only do you make art and creative things, you also fix things. Is
Yeah.
that what?
Oh,
you
all
have
the
here?
time. I'd kill snakes.
He does.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah.
There was a copperhead on the neighbor's porch.
does.
and-
Oh, yeah. We don't like those so much.
yeah, so we had to get rid of it.
It's always like, call Rick.
Call Rick.
will help. Even though this neighborhood seems to have a lot of stay-at-home dads.
Right.
Has had a lot of
And
stay-at-home
a lot of
dads.
artists.
Which, of course,
substantial.
I
Really?
will admit on the program here that Rick lives 2 doors down from me. So
Yes.
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 Maybe
I know
3.
him quite well. And, of course, Maria lives down the street.
Down the street.
So
Yeah.
Right.
we all know Rick very well.
Yes, we
and
do.
Rick is always ready to come help. So
Absolutely. It's, part of
It's
being
awesome.
a neighbor.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
your neighbor says, hey, I need a hand with
But
this.
you know how to do a lot of things. So that's why people go, oh, call Rick. He'll know what to do. It's always like, Rick will know what to do.
I remember a lot of things, I should say. When I was very young, my father was very authoritarian, being a cop and all. He bought a set of encyclopedias, and he said, these are for you, read them. I think I was 9, maybe 10. And a couple of years later, came in and I was sitting there reading S, right? Because I had started with A.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And he said, what are you doing? I said, reading encyclopedias because you told me to, sir. And he said, good, and left. And so I continued. And I didn't understand everything. I was only 9 to 12 years old. And I skipped over all the kings and queens of Who Gives a Shit.
Boring. Yeah.
But I retained a lot of that information. And in the future, after having read all that, it's like every now and then I'd recall some little snippet. A woman I worked with in Missouri, who was my mentor, I guess you will, she said, I need you to build me a 17-foot diameter circular flagstone patio right here. And you have to use the flagstones from the barn down the hill that burnt down. I'm like, okay. And it was late summer getting into autumn. And so I drug stones up the hill from this barn and I laid them out around this circular pit that I dug, and I filled the pit full of sand, then I filled it full of gravel, and then I put the stones on top, and then more gravel, and then cement in between it, and was sweeping the cement in between the stones dry. And she came out and said, how do you know how to do this? And I said, well, I read this thing about how the Romans built their roads, and I figured it should work.
Ooh. Oh. In the encyclopedia.
Well, now, wait
the
a minute. Why
encyclopedia.
did she
There you go.
ask you to do this if she didn't think you'd figure out how to do it?
Yeah.
She was an artist. She was literally my muse.
Okay.
Her name was Dolly Dufour.
What a great name.
Yes.
Her real name was Marie Surkamp.
Okay.
Her son is the lead singer of the band Pavlov's Dog.
Huh.
But she goes by Dolly Dufour because she lived in this
Is she
Dufour
still
house.
alive?
No, unfortunately
Oh,
not.
may she rest in peace.
But she was a wonderful human being, and she asked me to build this for her, and I did. And she was like, "So how did you know?" I said, "I read the encyclopedia when I was a kid. I remember some of it.
I love it.
I remember
love
some
it.
of it."
I love it.
Interesting. It's so interesting, sort of a background, base layer of information for you for your whole life, right?
Yeah. I had a strange childhood. I used to ride trains for fun.
You did not.
Freight trains.
No.
Yes.
Really? Was it like the 1920s, the Depression?
Felt like it on occasion.
The hobos, right?
Felt like it on occasion.
That is so not politically correct, but okay.
Oh, hobos are just hoboys.
Oh boy. Okay.
Traveling.
They're what?
They're migrant workers, hoboys. The guys who'd travel and they'd hoe your fields for you.
Oh, is that where it came from?
is it?
Migrant workers.
Oh my
I
God.
didn't know that.
Wow, we should have
Okay.
put that. We should have put that in our game show. But he would have gotten them all.
Oh, and speaking of which,
Speaking of which,
Uh-oh.
but before,
one last question.
one last question. Do you have any advice for folks in our age group, Generation Jones, who feels like they have been creative, but sort of feels like it's too late?
Oh, it's never too late. Absolutely not. Start over. Do something different. Scare yourself.
Ooh.
Do something you've never done before and just see what happens. Why not? You know, it's never too late. So many people have accomplished things later in life. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. So, Rick,
Uh-oh.
it's time for the game show.
The game. Da, 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 da.
What decade did these phrases or words come from?
Wait, but let's
So-
let him have a little sip of.
He's drinking.
Oh yeah. During our break, we made some absinthe.
It was very good.
It is
Still very good.
Still good.
Amazing.
It's good.
Ooh,
Go
Lord.
on. Go on. Go on with the game show.
Okay.
Go on.
So we're going to give you a words or a phrase from the 60s through like 2010s.
The aughts.
Yes.
The odds. Yep.
And you're
Okay.
going to tell us what decade you think these words or phrases came from.
Okay, I was alive for most of those.
Right.
Oh yeah. But
And
they
then
will not
at the end, we will give you a new phrase that the teens use now and see if you know what it means, which I wouldn't worry about it because you'll probably know it, but most people don't
Yeah,
know
maybe
it.
not.
I don't usually know
I
it.
have 18, so I
Well,
might have a chance.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, you're
we
playing.
we have kids too, but so that doesn't mean anything. I don't
No,
listen.
that means
I don't
shit.
know what the hell they're talking about.
Okay. Number one.
Would you like to start?
I'll do number one. Okay. Number
I'll
one.
let you start.
What decade did this word come from? Harry.
Harry.
Harry. And I'll tell you what it meant. It meant out of control.
I would have probably said 70s.
60s.
60s, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Herb.
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 What does it
A
mean?
man without social skills or style. A herb.
Herb. Wow, that's interesting. It could be a reference to the Star Trek episode. But, yeah, I'm going to say 70s for that one then.
It's the 80s.
Really?
Yeah.
Herb?
Yeah. A herb.
Or this is a Star Trek episode where people keep calling Kirk because he's not cool, Herbert.
Okay.
Herbert.
Interesting.
Oh.
Bunch of space hippies.
Gotta
I
love
think it's the
them.
original Khan episode.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know.
My husband has a good like a shirt that's the con chest piece. You
Right?
know, it's
Oh,
like
that's
he looks all
fabulous.
buff and, yeah. Okay, next one. Get jiggy.
Oh, that's got to be the 90s.
It does have to be the 90s.
Ding, 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 ding.
and that's Will Smith, right?
Getting jiggy with
Getting
it.
jiggy
Yeah,
with it. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so
Okay, so the new
Oh,
phrase
boy.
is Netflix and chill.
Oh, well, that's sex.
Oh, see, he knows. Okay, ding, 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 ding.
I
Good
thought it was
for
going to
you.
be something tough, like sick, but
No,
Sometimes we already did that one,
we already did that one.
and I don't think
yeah.
the person got it. But,
There
you
aren't
know.
that many, It's like trying to find the,
Oh,
they
yeah.
have
Oh,
specific things.
there's
yeah.
a new one, mid.
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 What is that?
It's so average that it's boring.
Oh wow!
It's not bad.
Oh, you're
it's
so
not good.
mid.
It's
But
mid.
Oh, that's mid.
Wow.
You don't even give it any emphasis. It's so
It's
mid.
Oh, see? Okay, now we can't use that one
Oh, I guess
unless
I can't.
unless our next guest has not heard of it. I like meta.
Meta.
I love that one. Not
Meta
the
is
company,
good.
but like the word.
Right.
Meta.
Which is what?
I don't know. What does it mean?
All-encompassing.
Oh, it is? Okay.
See, he knows all these.
I know
How's
that.
he
I
know
see.
these?
I
He
thought it was the
listens to the
opposite.
kids because he listens to them.
But he's got
And
the
the
youngest kids.
encyclopedia.
Yeah. The encyclopedia. Wait, in 1970.
70s encyclopedia. It did not have mid.
Or Meta.
Or,
No.
or better.
Well, Rick, thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun.
for doing this with us.
I don't usually get to drink absinthe before 1.
There you go.
Ooh, yeah.
So we hope you enjoy this podcast.
And follow us on social media, right? We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, where you may be watching and or listening to this, because we also rebroadcast these on YouTube.
The links will be in our show notes if you can't find us, and we'll have links for Rick's artwork.
Yes, I'm on Instagram on ricksart42.
Okay.
My daughter's in charge of curating that, so if it's bad, it's her fault.
Yeah, well, we won't blame her. I'm sure good stuff on there. And hey, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review. It'll help other folks find us, especially other Generation Jones folks. Because, this is who we love.
Right.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next podcast. And as my Aunt Millie always said, shoulders back, knockers up.
Cheers.
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 Booyah.